Welcome back to Watching Film and Varnadore Films. I'm Seth Varnadore. I'm a former high school and college football coach for nearly a decade. Now I break down film here on YouTube. Not just film, though. It's most of the time, but we're in the off season, which is a little dry from the film perspective, but we do get into another glorious season on the coaching calendar. We are into clinic season. I was able last weekend to go to the Nike Coach of the Year clinic in Orlando. Got to hear a bunch of great speakers. One of them was Billy Napier, and he talked about quarterback development. I thought it was a really, really good talk. So I wanted to kind of go through some of it. I thought fans might find some of it interesting. And it really just kind of drives home to me that like the obviously the record is not very good. And so on the surface, you'd say, oh, Napier is not a very good coach. Look at his record. But man, the guy's got really good plans, and when he's in a room of coaches, you see even other pretty good coaches listening and taking notice. So I thought it was a really good, really really well done presentation. Probably one of the better speakers of the event in terms of something you can actually get out of it. So I thought I'd take you guys through it and give you some of the kind of interesting things I thought. I'm not going to show everything because this is a paid clinic, so I did take a lot of pictures for my own personal reference, but if you want to see the whole thing, you can go to Nike Coach of the Year and pay for the clinic. But I did bust out some pretty fun stuff, and we'll take a look at it and kind of talk through his presentation here. So the title is Graham Mertz Quarterback Development 2023. Some really interesting stuff about Mertz up front. But to me, this whole presentation shows you why they've been able to, money notwithstanding for some of them, why they've been able to recruit at a pretty high level quarterbacks so far in this tenure. At least why they've had a bunch of really high level quarterbacks interested. And obviously they signed arguably the number one quarterback in the country this past year in DJ Lagway. So let's talk about quarterback development. First of all, let's take a look here. Here's Toledo head coach Jason Candle, and I think maybe his defensive coordinator, sitting in front of me here. They were taking some diligent notes during this presentation, so I thought that was pretty interesting. I think they heard some ideas and some concepts they liked as well and jotted them down, but let's get to it. So the first thing Napier started off talking about is kind of the recruitment of Graham Mertz. Last year, there was a lot of discussion on whether Mertz was, a good enough player. I think he was listed by a lot of people as the worst starting quarterback in the SEC at this time last year. I was one that thought he had some talent, but he just didn't have a ton of consistency. And if he could be more consistent, he could be a useful player. So let's look at what Florida's assessment was of him. So this was their evaluation of Mertz, just off film. So some of these, the sizes are, I think, not perfectly on, but this is just what they saw off film. Bigger guy that can move, had solid mechanics, but they could improve it. And then the arm talent, which was kind of showed in his recruiting ranking. He was pretty durable, obviously, up until this past year he got hurt. They thought within their system he had a room for a lot of growth. And then having all those starts against really good opponents was also very helpful. And these were what they thought his issues were and what they needed to fix. Accuracy, timing, and anticipation. And in the actual presentation, he shows, Napier does, some clips of similar concepts from Mertz's time at Wisconsin, where he makes a bad throw or is late, and then shows a pretty similar concept last year with Florida, where he's on time and on target with these throws. So what they thought his issues were: accuracy, timing, anticipation, ball placement. You see the technique, decision-making, and footwork. But these were things they thought they could fix because he was a big, talented guy, and those kind of guys don't come around too often, right? So then they got into kind of the quarterback development side. And this is the thing that, to me, once I heard this, as somebody that played quarterback, In high school, got recruited for quarterback in college as well. Has coached quarterbacks for most of my career. Um, this is the kind of stuff once we got into this that I'm like, man, I would love to play here or play in this kind of system where this kind of stuff is put on me. So I thought that was really interesting because you don't hear this offense as being one that quarterbacks flock to, but once you hear how they have everything set up, you can see why a guy like DJ Lagway would want to come here. So let's see. This is something that they've been saying since they got here. This is something O'Hara said in the very first chalk talk they did that I went and attended, the quarterback side. Build the person, develop the player. So if they truly believe better people make better football players, and they have a process for doing that. So how do they do that? Obviously, developing a relationship. That's going to be that one-on-one relationship between the coach and the player. Creating trust through communication and honesty. And this is interesting. This is not just they don't want to just basically tell the player, "Hey, you've been really bad." That's like honesty is not just saying, "Hey, you were terrible today." Um, it goes both ways. You want your players to be able to share frustrations or thoughts with you, and we'll get to that when we talk about how they game plan, where they actually give the quarterback a chance to be involved in that somewhat. But that's how you can kind of create that trust by giving them some ownership of the process here, and then giving them tools to be successful, not just as a football player, but also in life. And this is one of them here. It's hard to see here, but this is basically a weekly planner. They call this the blueprint. They tell the players, here's your week broken up basically from when you wake up to when you go to sleep. What are you going to do? I want you to write out what your week is going to be. They write it out, and then they have to turn it into their position coach. This isn't just a quarterback thing. This is, I think, a full team thing. You got to write out what your plan is. When are you going to work out? What time is class? When are you going to study? Are you going to get extra work in? What are you going to do? They will have the players write it out, turn it into the position coach, and the position coach can say, "Nah, this ain't good enough. Go back and do it again." So I think doing this is really interesting, especially somebody if you're not coaching at this college level where there's that kind of compulsory dedication almost just because of how difficult it is. Especially at lower levels, this kind of thing, you can really see what motivations are of your players. How many guys are going to be putting in extra work? How many guys are dedicated to it? It's kind of another way to kind of understand player motivation, which I thought was an intriguing concept. So then they talked about, they started to get into the meeting process, right? So we'll here. All right, so that's kind of that's more the off season, but talked about spring and some meeting stuff. And one thing Napier said that I thought was something I'm going to steal once I get back into coaching is making the meeting room competitive. So here's an example of, like a Jeopardy style game. So they call it the Gator games, the quarterback Gator games here. Plays for 100. Whatever. And then you have, all right, describe how to read this concept versus this defense. That's the question you got to answer. And you make it competitive in the room. Guys, if you got good competitors, they obviously want to win. They're going to study harder, make sure they can win these games. And that's something that the classroom or the meeting room has always been a spot where you want to make sure you get those guys this information. But doing these kind of things and making it competitive can help you kind of drive that point home a little bit more. And so that's what they talked about that in meetings in spring. And then this is kind of where it really drives a point home is like, if you're a quarterback and you want to be really good, this kind of stuff I think is kind of drives it home. This is not mandatory stuff. This is discretionary. This is stuff that you really should do if you're the quarterback. But this is not this is outside of mandated time. So this is not something that you do on it's not something you do at the facility. You probably could, but it's not under the direction of a coach. These are things you have to do. So if you've seen any of the other Napier clinics, you've seen him talk about the lesson plans. I'm sure this is something you've seen if you're into this kind of stuff. Talking about padding plays, and we'll show an example, I think, of that. So they give you you're going to have pad 12 plays. So that means you're going to draw out in detail 12 plays. And when we say in detail, I mean like the splits by the offensive linemen have to be perfect. The route depth by the receivers has got to be perfect. The splits of the receivers. Is this guy inside the numbers? Is he at the top of the numbers, the bottom numbers? Is he right on the hash, outside the hash? All that stuff's got to be written down perfectly. And this is basically what Bill Belichick makes his young assistants do. This is kind of the first test he gives them when they come in, is he wants them to pad a game. And there's rumors of guys like spending an hour on a play just because of they want to get it perfect. So padding plays is a really good process to learn. So they have them pad 12 plays. And they do a little bit of opponent emphasis so you can kind of see what does our opponent do. Defensive ID, so some defensive stuff, learning how their language, how they identify the defense. Then the ignition reel stuff is watching a pro that does similar stuff to you, so you kind of see how the best do it. And here's an example of a padded play. So here's a intentionally, unintentionally blurry here, but here's a padded play here, and then you have other ones over here to the right. So you see the route depths are perfect. The alignment's perfect. You got the ball in the right hash. Everybody's alignment is on. Check release here. So you're going to do this with every play, and you got the same thing to the right over here as well. So as these guys do this, these are a lot of really important mental reps here. And then once you kind of get in season, these are just kind of an example of what some meetings might be. So you have a lift and you'll review the previous game's film. This is probably like a Sunday or a Monday right here, right? Install the red zone play and gold zone 4-point plays in the initial plan. Another later in the week, right? You're going to have a lunchroom meeting with Coach O'Hara for 20 minutes. You go in and discuss. We're going to talk 2nd and 10, 4 open, and then you're going to discuss master your craft clips, which is kind of, again, watching those guys that do it at an elite level, those kind of things. How can I apply this to my game? And then the quarterback meeting, you're going to install these different things, do these cut-ups. And then on Wednesday, I think we skipped that here. But, yeah, so on Wednesdays or Thursday mornings, the quarterbacks will, in their time, need to write down what their favorite plays are kind of on the game script, on that openers list. What are their favorites? So they write those down, right? So they're going to write down their favorite plays, and then that's something that Coach Napier will use as he's getting the plan together and make sure that, and this is something I also heard Steve Sarkisian spoke at the same clinic, and that's something he talked about doing as well, where, hey, what do you like, this first play in, let's say, 2nd and medium. What's your favorite 2nd and medium play we ran this week? Or what's your favorite RPO that we ran this week in this situation? And he's like, he'll ask for a couple. Napier wants them to write down their favorites. But, Sarkisian said, hey, if my favorite and his favorite, if my favorites and his favorites overlap, I'm calling that thing first. Like, that's the first thing I'm going to call. So in that situation. So it gives the quarterback a little ownership, lets them get comfortable, obviously helps with that trust and communication side as well. Oh, let's go back to here. So that's kind of the stuff a little bit they're doing on their own in the meeting room. And then they started talking, they show this here, just kind of what are we going to go through here as a quarterback. The mechanics side was something I hadn't heard before. And I thought that was really a totally different twist that I hadn't really thought much about, and how they teach that and what kind of thought they put into it. So they're talking about biomechanics. Obviously, I'm sure they have things they can watch, things that kind of break down arm angles and things like that. And you saw earlier when they were talking about Graham Mertz's what they saw on film, low elbow, that kind of thing. They can fix that kind of stuff, throwing motion, obviously. The arm care side of it was something unique I hadn't heard many coaches talk about. So he talked about their warm-up. Every day they have a 33 throw warm-up. 6 minutes, 33 throws. That's it. That's the warm-up. And he lists out what the warm-up is, but there's they call it different things like NFL player names. And so you don't know exactly what it is. So I didn't put it up on here, but 33 throws every day. That's the warm-up. And then he said they want the quarterbacks to have about 70 competitive throws of practice, give or take. So 210 competitive throws in practice for the week. And they track these things. They track the warm-up throws. They track the competitive throws at practice. If a guy's at 72 one day or 68, that's all right. But they want to be hitting 210 competitive throws in practice a week. They're trying to, you see the arm care, they have like a cool down for the quarterbacks with their arms. So what exercises to do to kind of flush the body after practice. So being a quarterback at Florida is very involved. Right. So I thought that was kind of something I hadn't heard coaches talk about really too much. Then talked about the footwork. These are the different kind of footworks they have. So these are the only footworks they have. You master these, you can play in the offense. So he didn't go into much detail here, but you can kind of tell there's like double plays, probably a quick turn play. It might be probably quick game, hot three, rhythm three with the hitch. Three with the hitch, I'm assuming, is a longer developing, right? So this is probably go from quicker to longer as you go down here. Timing and anticipation, good picture here of it. You want to throw the ball before your guy turn. Ball should be halfway before wide receiver snaps his eyes around. They say it ball before eyes, and this is where you got a funny little quote from Napier saying the way we blocked last year, we had to use a lot of balls before eyes. So I think he understands the issues they had up front. He also said, and I'll say it since I heard one of the large national college football podcasts had somebody in attendance, and they already said this as well. But he basically said the guys that ended up playing tackle for them last year were basically guards, and that's why you go in the transfer portal to get tackles. So I wouldn't be shocked if you saw some of those guys playing tackle last year moving inside this season. So don't be shocked if you see that. Then accuracy. I thought this was a really good way to put it for a quarterback. Did you make him a runner? So can a guy catch and run? And the clip he showed after this was the slant throw to Eugene Wilson against Georgia. Ball was on time and on target. He was able to make that run after the catch to score. A bad ball that holds him up, he's not able to make that play, right? So do you make him a runner? And then obviously if the guy's got a defender draped on his right side, if you throw to the left side and he gets tackled, you're not making him a runner, but you're placing the ball away from the defender, right? Then I just put this on here because he talks about a common language. And, right, so he shows 5 buzz here. This is what they call 5 buzz. I'll read the description for you guys. This is a single safety, 3 deep, weak rotated, 4 underneath zone coverage. The bandit safety will rotate inside the boundary outside linebacker to play the weak hook. Free safety is the middle third. The corners will play the deep outside thirds. If corners have 2 verticals to their side, they must split between the 1 and 2. Boundary safety is weak hook, vertical carry on number 2. The star and money both buzz fast to the flats. And then it goes on to say, to the field, it may look like this coverage. To the boundary, it may look like this coverage. But this is important in the organization. Everybody calls this coverage 5 buzz. The defensive calls it 5 buzz. The offense calls it 5 buzz. Because when they're communicating with each other, they want to be using the same language. Because if you're calling this coverage 4 different things, Your defensive back coach wants to call it this, your defensive line coach calls it that, your tight ends coach calls it this, your receivers coach calls it that. Then the players hear 3 or 4 different things. When they come to the sideline and you ask them, what was it? And your receiver says it was this, and your quarterback says it was that. Well, that doesn't help. But now we're all speaking the same language. They both say it's 5 buzz. Perfect. We know what we're talking about. We know what we're getting, right? And then conversely, I can just say, hey, it was 5 buzz, and they both know what I'm talking about. So then after this, showed some clips of teams playing this against them, showed some clips from the NFL of people playing this. And this is obviously how they teach the quarterbacks as well, right? Hey, this is 5 buzz. We saw this last year. This was what it was. Here's our defense running it. Here's, somebody running against the Jacksonville Jaguars in the NFL. This is 5 buzz. And you can kind of help learn. And, he said basically once DJ Lagway committed last year, this isn't to take anything away from his high school coaching staff, which seems to have done a really good job. But they said once he committed last year, he's been doing this stuff. Like he's been doing these, this discretionary work. He's been talking with them about coverage identification, defensive identification since he committed. So he's been doing that for well over a year, and he feels like it helped him in his senior season. And this is talking, protection stuff, right? Understanding, hey, this is how we would set the protection here. This is, this is what it would look like against this kind of front, that kind of stuff. But they use not just the whiteboard, not just video of their own stuff. They'll show examples from the NFL, other examples from other places. So situation experts, this is something I'm sure they're still looking to improve on here. End of half, into game management, all that kind of stuff. But obviously, once you get your quarterback to where you kind of master this kind of stuff, it's very helpful. And then this is kind of what the final thing, and this is something I think that is important for all young players to understand. What do the coaches, NFL coaches and GMs want to know about you? How much time does he spend in the building on his own? How much freedom does he have at the line of scrimmage? How good is he with defensive recognition? What do we put on him in terms of protections? What type of leader is he? What type of learner is he? How passionate is he about the game of football? How does he handle hard? Right? So if this is what this group wants to know about you, well, man, if I've been doing this program for 4 or 5 or 3 to 5 years, I'm doing a lot of defensive recognition. I'm having to do a lot in terms of protection. Am I passionate about the game of football? Yeah, I've done a lot of extra work to play quarterback at Florida, right? So that helps answer these kind of questions for the quarterback. And I thought it was a really well done presentation, just in terms of somebody that's coached quarterbacks. The situation experts, I'm just looking over my notes again. Yeah, the situation expert period every practice. It was a really good presentation. And after he got off the slides, he talked about how they teach progressions. And this is something that's been my favorite thing about the offense, even though I don't think this offense is, the perfect scheme and wouldn't necessarily be, my favorite in college football or anything, but I do think it's sound. But one thing I do like about it is a lot of the concepts build off each other, and a lot of the concepts hit the same areas of the field different ways. So you'll see, like a snag concept where you got a snag, a flat, and a corner. And then you'll see a go, a flat, and then a shallow coming back across. Well, they're hitting the same spots on the field, that same triangle that snag did. So for the quarterback, maybe it's just the same progression. For the receiver, it's changed, and for the defense, it looks totally different. But if I'm purely progression-based as a offense, which Florida seems to be a progression-based passing game, which a lot of passing games has gone to, not necessarily just, I'm going to sit here, read this guy. I'm going to kind of go this route to this route to this route, depending on what I see pre-snap. And then I may have something where over here I'm in the progression, this route, this route, this route. where backside I've got a tag of, so if it's one-on-one, I can take a shot over here. So, going through the progressions and teaching kind of, all right, it's going to be this kind of progression, this kind of progression, this kind of progression, this kind of progression. And that's kind of how they teach concepts to the quarterback. It's, it's a progression one concept. Okay, so now I understand I got to read it bang, bang, bang. Or no, this is a progression 3 concept. Okay, I got to bang, bang, bang. So that was interesting just because when I was coaching, we weren't totally progression. I got more towards the end of my coaching career, more progression stuff. But as I've been out, I've started to like it a lot more, and kind of will go back to it when I get back into coaching one day. So that was interesting to hear. And then, in that, he also talked about going. Everyone, talks about wanting to push the ball vertically. As he was explaining these concepts, they're reading deep to short on a lot of these. So they want those vertical shots. So just last year, for a while, didn't happen. So I'm sure everyone's excited to hear a positive video and not a ton of negativity. Obviously, performance on the field needs to be better, but these are the kind of things that remind you that, these guys, I think you can hold both things in mind that, I think Napier is a good coach, but you could definitely argue that he's not doing a good job so far, or a good enough job at Florida. But everyone said this guy's an idiot. That doesn't hold true. You've got Division I head coaches kind of hanging on every word, writing, taking notes in front of me the whole time. So those guys thought it was worthwhile. So and those guys are winning a lot of games and probably going to get a big job here pretty soon. So just wanted to come with a video here. It's been a while, and I thought this was an interesting topic, just to hear kind of what their plan was for Mertz. I thought was really something we hadn't heard too. You've heard a little bit, but not in that in depth of, hey, this is what we wanted to fix. And then just all the stuff they put on the quarterback, not just like on the field mandatory stuff, but hey, man, you want to be the starter? These are the things you got to do. And that's what their guys in the past have done and won a lot of games. So if you're a Florida fan, you're hoping that kind of comes to fruition this year. It's going to be a tough schedule, but we'll see how it goes. I think he's talking at another clinic here in March. And then there's also the Chalk Talk at the end of March. I will try to be in attendance for all those. I really enjoy hitting up the clinic circuit and learning stuff from a variety of coaches. And so this may be part 1 of the off-season clinic talk. Thank you for watching so far. If you're enjoying this, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Help me game the YouTube algorithm here. And maybe we'll be back with more clinic talk later in this off season.